Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. It's such a pleasure to be back here with you all as always, and a massive warm welcome if you're joining us here for the very first time. Welcome to Maverick Mind, the podcast. I'm so excited as always to introduce today's guest for you. Today, I am joined by Anne Alexander-Sieder. She is a professional actress. She was an actor back in the US. And then nearly 30 years ago, she moved from the US to Germany for love, which meant her taking a 16-year hiatus or a break from her acting career. So she went from professional actress to taking a break. She then relaunched her acting career in another country and another language and managed to match that success once again, which I think is so inspiring. In acting specifically, we have this image in our mind that it's kind of a game of luck. Anne is embodied proof that actually there's a lot of strategy behind becoming a successful, if I can say that word today, successful performer in any field. So whether you're an actor, whether you're a dancer, whether you're a musician, these are all tips and tricks and tools that she uses to brand yourself in such a way that kind of makes your success a lot more likely, if not inevitable, which is so special and so empowering. So these kind of tips that we share in today's episode are things that no matter what your channel of creativity, whether you're a performer or whether you're building a creative business, whether you're an artist, whether you're a painter, whether you're a sculptor, these are all things that I really think are kind of foundational and necessary and vital for us to hear and to learn when you're trying to put your work out into the world and when you're trying to kind of create that creative life for yourself. No matter what your channel of creativity is, whether you're an actor or whether you're a painter or somewhere in the middle, we're often given this image that we have to put a lot of our emphasis on the audience or on the casting director or on somebody outside of you that's going to almost open the gate for you and allow you to be center stage or allow you to have your work in that gallery or allow you to have that fashion show or whatever it might be. But actually, it's not always a game of luck. It's a game of strategy, and moreover, it's a game of branding. Branding is a word that we use often enough on this podcast because I really think that no matter what your creative channel is, whether you think you're creating a business or whether you're not, you're creating a brand. And when you kind of have more of a brand around what you're doing, it gives you so much more backbone and so much more confidence to put it out there because you have some kind of idea and some energy behind your message. Otherwise, it can kind of feel like you're just putting things out there for likes, putting things out there, throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something will eventually stick. Or it can just feel like you're putting things out there, hoping for the best and hoping that one day somebody will just magically give you the keys to the kingdom. And that might happen. But I find also when you have a brand and you have a message and you have a really clear vision in your mind, it really strengthens your confidence as a creator. It also really cuts through a lot of the anxieties that we are so prone to feeling. So no matter what your creative channel is, whether you're an actor, performer, artist, creative business owner, designer, or whatever else, these messages that we share in this show today, I think are really applicable to you all. Of course, though, the language will be more directed to our performance out there. That said, let's dive in, shall we? Anne Alexander-Sieder, a massive warm welcome to Maverick Mind. And a massive welcome to Maverick Mind. I'm so happy to have you on the show, and it's lovely to bring you to this community.
Ellie, I'm truly honored to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation too. Just in the pre-conversation, I'm like, yes, this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, for sure. So I always kind of like to start from a standpoint of trying to paint a picture for the audience of how you kind of your journey through creativity, I suppose. I think for all of us, we kind of have the same answer to that, and that is that from as far as we can remember, we couldn't not make things in whatever capacity. But I mean, for you, your channel eventually was through acting. So I'd love to know, like, was that something you were interested in from a really young age, or was it something like you were interested in loads of different things and then you eventually landed on that?
Yeah, well, kind of both. I mean, I honestly believe that we human beings are like faceted diamonds, and each one of those facets kind of represents a life you could have lived, a road you could have taken. And the way I apply that to my acting career is I just need to find the facet that most closely resembles this character, even if it's like way down to the point at the bottom and not up on top at the crown, and shine it up and hold it up to the light. So I've always been creative in one form or another. And I think I could have found happiness and fulfillment, like being, a painter, an interior designer. I love interior design. It's one of my passions. I mean, I get all excited about lamps and chairs. I just think they're so sculptural and sexy.
Oh
So
yeah, me
I
chairs.
could,
I've always had a thing about chairs. I don't know what
I
it is,
know.
but I've always been obsessed with chairs.
And lamps, you got to admit. I mean, a
Yeah,
really
I love a
nice lamp
lamp.
that
Yeah,
it can be beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and lighting is very important.
For
So
sure.
I came to my first like experience as an actor was at summer camp. And I was away at sleepover summer camp, and they had decided that year they were going to put on Oliver Twist. And they kind of shuffled us from room to room, sing here, dance there, read this, see if you can carry a tune, blah, blah. And I could have cared less. I probably would have rather been riding my horse. I mean, I was like, whatever. I had no idea what it meant, was not invested in it, nothing. I ended up getting cast as Nancy, which still, no, I mean, like I see it, it didn't mean anything to me. I was 10, 11, something like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was up on the stage and I can still see the people in silhouette and I'm singing As Long as He Needs Me, which of course I had no idea what I was saying, right? And all of a sudden, though, I could kind of like feel this connection to the audience. And oh, I like even get like a rush of emotion right now when I remember it. And it was like this hit of something, like, in the best way. And there was like this stillness. The closest thing that I could maybe equate it to that I've never done it myself, I imagine it must be like this, is that second when you jump out of an airplane before your parachute goes off, kind of like that.
Mm. A free fall.
And yeah, in the most beautiful of ways though. And just being held by the audience in that way and me holding them like we were holding each other. And this connection I think is what really I go back to again and again and again in my acting journey. So I came home from summer camp and I started like immediately, grabbing all the neighborhood kids and like, putting them together in little songs and dance, food, glorious food, right? So I'm sure my parents probably thought I was going to be a director, but when I was about 17, that's when I really started to rethink what I wanted to do with my life. And I think before then, I had a lot of the typical types of things. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a dentist. I wanted to be a veterinarian. For a brief moment, I also wanted to be a psychologist for deaf children because I had
Wow.
taken sign
Specific.
language, very specific, very niche. Yes. I had taken American Sign Language as a blow-off course in middle school, and I
Wow.
fell in love with it. It was just so expressive, and I and I think in a way, I'm sure I could have been very happy doing that. My life would look very different. But it puts together all the things that I love about acting, and that's trying to figure people out, expressing yourself with gestures and facial expressions because they don't hear. They're making sure that you are seeing how they're feeling, and they're it's beautiful. It's like watching a person dancing with words.
Yeah.
A- and kids. So that's kind of the long-winded answer to your short question.
I love that. And yeah, I think it's really amazing that at that age that you could kind of be present in your body when on stage enough to like recognize that feeling maybe.
Yeah,
Which is really
it
cool.
took me
And
by
like,
surprise.
yeah, which like now I think about it, I used to dance as a teenager. And now I think about it, I now I can kind of when you said that, I immediately went back to being on stage at that age and like having a similar feeling of like that feeling of connection with the audience. I think that you rehearse all these things and they're kind of an idea, and then when you get on stage, you're like, oh, people actually love watching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. I love that. And then, kind of from that
We're
point, did you explore other things, or was it just you were hell bent on being an actress at that time?
Yeah, pretty much hell bent on being an actor. I was living in Detroit at the time. My grandma, who I was really close to, lived in Chicago. She's like, come to Chicago. What I later found out was she had been under contract either to MGM or Paramount or Columbia, one of those, like back in 1925 or whatever it was. I mean, like a long time ago. But I didn't know that. And so she was always really supportive of me. And she was the one who actually found the drama school that I studied with, which ended up, would always bring in people from the coaches from RADA. So it was a very kind of a classical theatrical training. And we even, a bunch of us went over to RADA and, did a semester abroad over there. And yeah, I was pretty much hell bent on it from the beginning. There was never like a thought. Once I decided this is what I want to do, there was never a thought of doing anything else until I ended up moving to Germany, which,
Yeah.
things took a turn then. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Did you always want to be on stage or did you want to be kind of behind camera or in front of the camera instead? Or were you kind of open to either or?
Either or and either or. Like I studied directing briefly at NYU Tisch. Um, just before I met my husband, who is German, which is, the reason I'm here. And well, there you go. And that was like 29 years ago that I came to Germany. And I had had like one of my best years ever as an actor. So I was SAG-AFTRA. I was working on my equity card. And I was kind of finally to the point where I didn't have to have a side hustle. I wasn't bartending. I wasn't waiting tables. You don't need a lot of money when you're that age, right? So I was like feeling great. I was like, yes, I'm doing great. My life is perfectly, I can see the road. It's laid out before me. And then, of course, that's when, the universe throws you a curveball. And my
Yeah.
curveball was this hot German guy. And so I ended up, in Munich, pregnant, starting our family right away. I didn't speak German back then. And I didn't see how how to make it work. I mean, you have to be able to communicate, even if you're not using words, you have to be able to understand what's being said to you. And German is not one of those languages that you can just guess. It's not like Italian or French or Spanish where
Yeah.
futuro, future? Yeah,
Yeah.
future,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
German is like Auskunft. What? Oh my God, excuse, are you
Yeah.
okay? You know. And um, so I just didn't see a way forward. So my son was at this point about 2 years old, and I saw a poster for the American Drama Group in Munich. And I was like, perfect. Let me go audition for them. So I make an appointment, I go audition. And the guy was super nice. He's like, yes, welcome aboard. Welcome to the family. And he pulls out his big calendar, paper calendar. This is a long time ago. And he starts to show me their tour dates. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I totally have wasted your time. There's no way I can tour. I have a 2-year-old at home. I'm so sorry. And I got up and I'm, feeling discouraged, mortified, all of the, disappointed, all of that. And I'm just about to close the door. And just on a whim, I leaned back in and said, "You don't happen to know anybody here in Munich, do you, that could help me?" And he's thought about it for a second. He said, "Yeah." And he gave me two names. And this was like, first of all, a revelation, because I think it was the first time I consciously in my life, like, even realized that like asking for referrals from someone is a thing and it works. And people are happy to do an easy lift to help you in a way that is no skin off their nose. And so I went and contacted these two men, and they were both extremely helpful in getting my voiceover career launched in Germany at the time. And at the time, I mean, there was a ton of voiceover work, especially for Americans, especially for Americans. Americans was really the accent of choice back then, and it was and English is the language of choice.
Mm.
It's the bridge language. I don't know how long that's going to be the case,
Yeah.
with English and all of that, and definitely not America with the way things are now. But the other thing is AI, so it makes it a whole kind of a moot point. But at the time, there was a ton of stuff going on with all the big companies, all the mid-sized companies, even some of like the between small and mid-size. Everybody was trying to have a broader audience than just Germany. And so they needed someone to bridge that audience for them. So there was a lot of work. Sometimes I worked 5 times in a day, 5 different studio jobs. Yeah, it was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. And the great thing was it was so flexible. So I could go pick up my son from daycare, bring him with me to the next job. I always had my dog and my son in tow. When my son wasn't in daycare, my dog and my son were there. My dog was always with me, but my son also came. And
Mm.
that led to presenting, which then led to commercials. So in that 16-year hiatus, I was always doing acting adjacent stuff, but I wasn't acting. And that these were not they were always fun, but it wasn't like this creative, it was never satisfying that creative itch.
Mm.
And I was always looking for something to fill that hole without realizing I was looking for it. So I would start something like I would get into oil paints and I would do it for like obsessively for 2, 3 years. And I was like, nope, done. And then I would just one day I would just put the brushes down and be like, I'm bored. And then I would go on to mosaics and I did jewelry design. And then I studied interior design. And then I went to aqua, watercolors. And then I was doing collages. And all of the time I didn't realize that I was looking for something that was to replace the hole that was in my heart and soul from acting.
Mm.
And it wasn't until my son was like 16 years old. We had a standing movie date on Friday nights. And he came to me on Thursday and he said, "Mom, I don't want to hang out with you on Friday or ever again on Fridays." And I'm like, "Oh God, I
How
knew this
blunt
day
of
was coming."
children.
Yes, basically. And so, but and this is something I think often women do more than men. Men do it too. Um, but often I feel like for different reasons, men, maybe I shouldn't generalize. I don't want to get you in trouble here with people doing their nasty comments. But people, right, when they start a family, they're like, oh God, it needs to be safe. It needs to be secure. And creative jobs can be not that.
Yeah.
Can be. They don't have to be. Because I think in a lot of ways, we've all been kind of sold this bill of goods that in order to be a
Yeah.
real artist, you've got to be a starving artist.
Yeah.
And I don't believe it.
Me neither.
Good. Yeah.
I do a lot of work of trying to like break that down because I think it's a complete load of bullshit, to be honest.
It
because
is
I
absolutely
think to be a
bullshit.
starving artist, or to what I call being broken, those are the two things that will
I
stifle
love
your
that.
creativity the most. Like being broke and having poor mental health, or not having control over your creative energy and your mental health, are the two things that will hinder your creativity more than anything else.
I
So to
could
say that
not
for
agree more.
success you need those things is a complete pile of bullshit.
Absolute. Absolutely. I could not agree more. In fact, the podcast that I recorded for my podcast, Act Bold, was literally about that. If you want to free up your creative muscles, if you want to, open those channels, then get yourself some financial stability. Could not agree more. So, yeah, so that led me to like the first time in my life I could ever think about, well, what do I want? And not my life, but the first time in my married family life.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to have fun. And the best thing that came to my mind was like, I would love to do an acting workshop. Let me just sit down and Google this. And so I sat down and Googled acting workshop Munich English. And one came up. And there was one spot open starting the next day. And it was a 3-day workshop with this coach out of LA. And I immediately whipped out my credit card, saved my spot, and showed up the next morning full of hope, and nervous. Can I still act? I don't know. I mean, all this stuff, right? And Ellie, it was like this pilot light had been burning inside of me this whole time. And being in that workshop, thank God it was good. Thank God it was good. I don't
Oh
know
yeah.
what my life would look like if it hadn't been good, right? But it was good. And so all of a sudden, this pilot light that had been burning just like burst into flames. And the coach saw it literally. He's like, "You are on fire. You and you." There was another woman, and you. There were three of us actually. And he's like, "You guys need to hang out together. You need to like, cultivate this and da 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 da." Da." And they did both become very good friends of mine. So I came home to my husband, um, and I said, "I need to relaunch my acting career." I was 47. I said, "I need to relaunch my acting career." And he's like, "Do you?" Do you really? Is that smart? He doesn't come from creativity. My husband is an architect, so it sounds creative, but he's actually
Okay.
not.
They're actually a
Yeah.
lot more mathematical than people might
He's
think,
he's
or
an he's German, so he's
yeah.
an engineer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, architect and German together. So,
Right. Not to say because there are some amazingly creative
oh, for
German
sure.
architects,
Yeah.
right? But my husband isn't one of them. But he's
Awesome.
he's great at what he does, but that's his creativity is not as great as asset. He has other good qualities. And so anyway, so yeah, so what did that look like? So for me, often your biggest challenge, your biggest obstacle presents the answer, presents the solution. So my obstacle was I was feeling rusty. I hadn't really acted in 16 years and acting styles changed. It was now more authentic, right? Because I had learned about acting and done all that in the 80s, 90s, that kind of a thing. So now we're into 2000s, so 20 years later, whatever it was. And acting styles change. Like when you look back at old movies, like Laurence Olivier, who was like the god of acting, we would be like, dude, tone it down, you know?
Yeah, true. That's true, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure he could kill it today because he would learn it differently. But that was the style back then, and that's how people did it.
Mm.
So I knew for me, in order to get my confidence back and to kind of like feel like I deserved a place in the acting world again, I needed to I needed to practice. So that meant I needed more training. I was way too old for the German system. So 29, you age out at that. Yeah, I don't know if that's changed now, but back then it was 29 was like, nope, no point. You're too old. So that was kind of that. And so I had two choices, honestly. I could fly to the training in London, New York, LA, but obviously that would have been expensive with flights and food and hotels
Mm.
and, and time-wise as well. Even though my son didn't want to hang out with me on the weekends, I still had to make him breakfast and make sure he did his homework and ground him when he didn't come home on time, all those good things, right? And so again, like the problem presented the solution. So the problem was I needed this training here in Munich, and it wasn't here. So that was a solution. So I decided if I could just find like a handful of other actors to split the costs of the workshops with me, then I could bring in these amazing coaches and get the training I needed. But what ended up happening was I was getting the training for free because I was structuring it. I figured my time is worth something. So I'm the one
Yeah.
doing all this, the energy and all that, right? So
Mm.
I was structuring the cost of my participation into the whole structure, bringing in these coaches from LA, New York, London, Berlin, and building a community, which was like a bonus that I hadn't even thought of. But like when actors would take one workshop with me, they would want to take another one because I was bringing in these amazing coaches. And also I was earning, 1,000 to a couple thousand euros per workshop, which was also like bonus. It wasn't my intention. All I wanted was to get training for like the same amount I would spend if it were already in Munich.
Mm.
So it ended up being great all around. And I did that for like a year and a half. And then I felt like, okay, I'm good. And now it's time to go. And
Time to
then
go.
that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that like the problem became the solution. Because I think a lot of us kind of get stuck in a bit of a victim mentality of like, if I can't do the version that I have in my head, if I can't kind of do that right now, then I'm just gonna atrophy or just gonna get a bit stuck or just get really frustrated and kind of hope that someone will come and save me somehow. Or someone will just like one day anoint me with the permission to do what I want to do.
Absolutely.
But I
Yeah.
think to see like, okay, this is what I want to do. How can I somehow make this happen for myself? Like in maybe a left of field way than what we'd think we'd have to do. I love that.
Yes, because again, like the problem is the solution as well. Like to pay for this high-end training, even once a month, even if it's in Munich, was also expensive,
Mm.
right? So it was like finding a solution that truly fit and around my schedule so there were all of these different things. But then the next thing was when I relaunched my acting career, I was just kind of going about it the same way that I had gone about it before, which was la 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 la, I didn't really have a plan or anything. I think I ended up getting lucky when I was younger. I knew some good people who hooked me up on some good projects. And I think people are always willing to do things for younger people that they're not necessarily willing to do for, at this point, now I'm almost 50, so that they're not willing, what the doors that were open to me as a 25-year-old were not there open, people waving like, come here, as a 50-year-old. So, and I also kind of needed to redefine who I was as an actor because
Yeah.
yeah, I left the industry as like an ingenue type thing. And then I'm coming back and it's like, what am I? Who am I? Where am I? All of these different things. And I also had a lot of limiting beliefs myself around my age, right? Around my
Yeah, I
age,
can
around my,
imagine.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. My lack of perfect German. And again, the problem presents a solution. So I became a life and career coach just so that I could adopt somebody else's framework and strategies to get myself over it because I
Yeah.
knew it wasn't helping me. So it's like, does this belief serve me? No, it does not. How do I get over it? I have no idea. Let me find out. Right.
Mm.
And so that's what I did. And that did help. And then I realized it did a couple of things. First, I realized I could just adopt somebody else's strategy and framework and shorten my timeline, like how long it would take me to learn something. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, what else don't I know? Ooh, a lot. You know, let me see. Like there's this branding thing and marketing and
Mm.
networking, not a clue about any of that stuff.
No.
So that set me off on this odyssey about finding out about all of that stuff, and which led to kind of the second phase of my acting career, and also the second phase of how I was using the workshops. So while initially the idea was to get the training, and that was it, all of a sudden, like when I'm getting coaching from these other people, and some of them were very expensive. So I was like, how can I come up with the money for this? Right? I need, I don't know, 5 grand or whatever it was, right? So
Mm.
how can I do this? Ah, I could put on a couple of workshops, right? And so then the solution was just to use the workshops as a way, a means to an end. Or like if I wanted to finance a short film, filmmaking is expensive, or get new
Mm.
headshots, get a great photographer, makeup artist, art production, it's expensive. So,
Mm.
so getting that stuff done, so it became a means to an end then.
Mm.
And while I was also getting all this great coaching from all these different kinds of coaches, I realized I had a branding problem as an actor.
Mm.
And I used to only get cast as like this super reserved, conservative, cold, ice cold bitch. And like that was it, pretty much. And I remember like, having conversations with my agent, like, why? I'm not a bitch. I mean, I can be a bitch, of course,
I'm sure we all
but
can be at some point.
right. But yeah, that was isn't how I see myself, and I feel like I'm much more warm and playful, and have more of a sense of humor and all of that. And they were like a stretch, I mean, it was like having to contain myself all the time. I'd finish that, and I was like, shake it off, right?
Loosen us up, man.
Exactly. Um, and so I went to my agent and I was like, why? What can we do? She's like, I don't know. You have dark hair, light eyes. You look icy. It's just how it is. And I was like, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. So that was when I realized, okay, they're obviously not seeing something about me that I know to be true. So
Yeah.
how can I change this? Again, the problem presents the solution, right?
Hmm.
So, and that's when I really started to go about changing my branding as an actor. And like now, like if I think it's useful to have like a log line for an actor, right? So my log line is I play high status, morally ambiguous women with a fierce heart. And
Nice.
so that so that can kind of go into drama, it can go into comedy, it can kind of go into anything. But if you see me and meet me, you get it,
Mm.
right? It's not like morally ambiguous. I don't see that. Oh yeah, I see that. Right. So it works for me and my materials and how I look and the kinds of roles, importantly, that I want to play. And so when I changed my branding, that's when I started to like other actors were like, because you always have to have somebody to read with you, right? When
Yeah.
you're auditioning for stuff. And then people were like, how how'd you get this? I mean, this is like, what's going on? And so that's when I started to coach actors one-on-one. And that very quickly led to my signature program, which is Get Better Roles, which is where I help trained actors who've been in the business for a couple of years, who feel like they've been doing all the right things, kind of like how I felt when I first finished my training again.
Mm.
And they're still not getting the opportunities to audition for the kind of roles that they deserve.
Yeah.
So,
Love that.
yeah.
And I think that something I've noticed within actors that I know from friends and family and also ones that I've worked with. it's really easy as an actor. Also, anyone listening, if you're a dancer, but kind of any creative path, but I'd say it's more obvious within the anything you have to audition for. Um, to constantly be giving your power away. To I'm just going to show up and do my best, and then the rest is in their hands. Like, and then I'm just going to do hundreds of these and hope for the best. And over time, it's happened with so many people that I know that over time and many, many, many rejections, it then starts to really wear down your own self confidence, your own trust in your talent, your own kind of self image. And I have so many friends that are actors that have had to take breaks because they've just had, I can't handle anymore. And I keep telling them that you have to be doing something that you have power over, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're always just putting your whole life in someone else's hands, and
Yeah,
that can be really draining, but it sounds
totally.
like, was that something that you kind of had to have a realization around, or was it always something that you were maybe more innate within you, that you kind of always kind of trying to keep your power in some way?
Yeah, I think so. My dad was really an authoritarian, and I was always a rebel. And it really got me in trouble as a teenager, like big trouble. But I wasn't a bad kid. I just didn't want to do what people told me to do. I wasn't out there doing drugs or stealing or whatever, but I just, no, don't tell me what to do. I just wasn't interested. And I think the only difference, I'm still that same girl, but now I'm allowed to do what I want to do because I'm an adult. So I've always had that. So like somebody telling me, no, you can't do it, or that's not how it's done. Bullshit. Says who? Where's that written? And who wrote that book anyway? What do
Yeah.
they know?
Yeah, I love that. I think I always reminding people and kind of trying to drill in that, to recognize when you're following somebody else's narrative. There's a lot of narratives that are in the world, that beliefs that get swirled around, like we were saying earlier about all artists, all creatives got to be starving, broke, or broken,
Yeah.
that you're never going to make money in any kind of creative field, that it's going to be hard. I mean, it is going to be hard, but most things that are worth it are going to be a bit hard. Um, and that it's a dreamer, all this blah 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 blah, etc etc. And you have to realize how much of that is outside noise and how much you actually believe is true, you know and I think
Totally.
to be like really paving your own path creatively, you have to call bullshit on a lot of things and say, well, actually, like, who says it has to be like that?
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. That's one of the first things so for me, there are 5 pillars of a thriving acting career, but honestly, I think it goes for any kind of a creative career, especially when who you are or what you specifically do is the product. So it's mindset, branding, marketing, networking, and community. So the first 2 pillars that you need to get into place are the mindset and branding. And one of the first things that goes with mindset is, for actors in particular, actors, as I'm sure you know, since you have actor friends, oh man, my agent sucks. I haven't had an audition in weeks. Or the casting directors, they just want to see the same people over and over again, and it's not fair, it's rigged. Or I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too white, I'm too dark. I mean, 1,000 different things, right? There are, I always love to hold up Peter Dinklage. I'm like, you think he ever thought maybe he wasn't tall enough? you
Yeah.
know? But and often we we've kind of been sold a bill of goods as actors, or been conditioned to believe that agents and casting directors in particular have all this power. But the truth of the matter is, they're just 2 more doors that you can use to actually get to the decision makers. They are not the decision makers. So when you're blaming them for your whatever lack of results that you want to have, you have given them your power. And if you want to take it back, you have to say, this is not happening. The problem is the solution. So what can I do to fix that? And the answer is, if you're not getting the auditions through that agent, sure, you can look for another agent, but you're jumping from the fire into, or the frying pan into the fire, however that phrase works.
Yeah.
Maybe you might get a better agent, but wouldn't it make more sense to figure out how to actually develop authentic relationships with the people who actually make decisions? Because people
Mm.
like to work with people they like. And that goes across the board. Things are political. They are, you know?
Yeah. I think there's a culture of kind of trying to muscle your way to the top as well and just sort of do whatever, being quite ruthless within
Mm,
certain things. But I think actually building genuine connections with people will always serve you so much better than going to one of those like quote unquote networking events or building a network in whatever way through auditions or whatever else, with your own sole purpose in mind. I think to build
totally.
genuine connections with people is always going to be way more beneficial. Being a good
Yeah,
human.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is why when you know your brand, it becomes part of your brand. Like
Yeah.
knowing what your sole purpose is becomes part of your brand, knowing the roles that you really would love to play. Because if you think about it, or this works for writers too, I think, or even probably dancers, right? There are performances that you love to watch, and then there are
Mm.
those that you are just would give your little brother to play, to dance.
Yeah.
And not your left leg, because then you couldn't dance, right? So but and it's the same with acting, right? There are roles I love. They're amazing, but I have no interest in playing them. And then there are these roles that come up again and again where I'm just like, oh man, I would love to play that. And there's always a through line. It sometimes may be difficult to find, but you got to find that through line because that feeds into who you are, what your brand is, which will then feed into authentic marketing and authentic networking because it gives you direction for your networking. You're not just throwing spaghetti against the wall, hoping something sticks. You're like, no, I would love to work with this director because her last film just was exactly the kind of stories I want to tell because of, so when you reach out to her, it's authentic. It's
Yeah.
not bullshit. It's not like, oh, I'd love to work with you, like, like what everybody says, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure. That's a really
people can
powerful
tell.
thread to kind of make because I think a lot of creatives, whatever your path is, if you're a painter, if you're an actor, if you're a designer or whatever else, we hate the idea of being pigeonholed. And I think a lot
Yes.
of the time when we say things like you have to have a brand or like create a brand for yourself, it feels like you're being put in that box. But
Yeah.
actually, you're really not. You're kind of channeling your creative energy in a much more effective way
Yeah.
and being like really intentional about what rooms you're putting yourself in instead of, as you say, throwing spaghetti everywhere and hoping that it's going to stick to something, because that leads, in my experience, to a lot of creative burnout.
Yeah. And
And I'm hoping for the
disappointment
best. Yeah.
and unfulfillment,
Yeah.
unfulfillment, because you may end up getting, networking does work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making those connections works. But if you're not being intentional about the connections that you're making, or even have a clue about the kinds of roles that you play, I have a lot of actors come to me and they're like, I just want to act. I just want to get paid for acting. And it's like, let's let's want more, right?
Yeah.
What is your ideal career look like? And let's aim for that.
Yeah, because you can get
Be
paid to act in, I don't know, like commercials for something that you don't care
exactly.
about, and then you wouldn't be
Yeah,
very fulfilled doing that.
right. But it would pay for a short film or a
Yeah,
feature
exactly. It
film.
could
So,
pay your way
right.
to something that you do actually care
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
For
yeah,
sure. Yeah, my dad always
yeah.
used to tell me this story about a friend of his that did voiceovers as well, and he was a really passionate stage actor, but kind of got to the point where he didn't really didn't think he was going to make much money as a stage actor in London. And also kind of didn't want to. He wanted to do it for the love of it. So he got paid a lot of money doing voiceovers, even though he didn't particularly love them as much, to be able to do what he loved for the love of it, which I think was quite powerful.
Absolutely. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that there's no
Yeah.
need to be a starving artist, which actually leads into this Passion Project to Pro, which is this program that I'm launching next year, which is based on exactly teaching people how to curate experts, influencers, coaches, depending on whatever their thing is, and creating events around that, but literally
Mm.
leading them through it step by step. So the first time we meet, it's all the ideation. Okay, this is your passion. I don't know, it could be cake decorating, frankly. It could be anything. It could be upholstery, furniture upholstery. It could be photography or screenwriting. Really, there's anything that doesn't require a higher degree, you can create events around and then, or meditation even, right? So then knowing what your event is and what is the best way to do that, whether that's in person, online, a retreat, a seminar, a supper, a hike in the mornings, whatever that looks like, right? And then how to find the coaches and the experts that you need, and then how to negotiate with them to figure out your pricing and all that, then where to find the other participants, until finally, like, it's over a 9 week period, but we meet through 8 weeks. So there's a 2 week break right at the end. So we go all the way up, and the right before the break, they're all going to launch their events.
Mm.
And then we come back and we do a debrief, what went well, what didn't go well, what are you going to do next time? So that everybody who participates, right? Information is nothing without implementation, but everybody who participates gets a win. Everybody who wants one gets one.
Love that. Love that idea. And it's also coming off the back of your experience with your acting workshops and things like that. So I think creating events is also a really great way to build a network too, especially if you're
Totally.
some one of those people, which will be, I would say, 99% of people listening to this, one of those people that hates networking. Like that word just like puts shivers down your spine. The idea of going to a networking event and standing there just hoping someone's going to come over and talk to you. If you create the event, then you get to know everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great idea. Yeah. Actually, that's the third phase of these workshops is what I'm in now. And it came about because I was like, well, how can I create something of value with with somebody that I would like to work with so that they can see me as a human being and not just as this lowly little actor.
Mm.
And when you like with casting directors, producers, showrunner, whatever it may happen to be, right? People that other actors would want to meet and work with as well. So, but when I'm the one organizing this event, we're talking eye to eye. I'm not,
Yeah.
this is it's a whole different dynamic, and I'm literally giving them, something of value, money.
Mm.
And so I've actually become good friends with two of the casting directors that I did this with. And interestingly, I mean, I never thought that that would happen. All I was looking for was like, see me as a human being. Like, don't see me as this actor. Right? See me as an actor for sure, but not just
Mm.
as an actor,
Yeah, not as an
right?
actor.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so, yeah, I couldn't agree more. But for the thing about coming in, and I'm that person, I learned a new word this week. It was an ambivert. And I
Mm.
discovered that I am an ambivert. So I am one of those people, I get really charged up. I'm really extrovert when it comes one-on-one. But like a whole group of people, I'm like, oh God, no, I just kind of collapse in
Mm.
among myself, right? But I've known this about myself for a while, so I have found a few tricks to get over this. And one of them is when you go to an event, first go get like something to take the edge off, like have a wine spritzer or something, right? Just
Mm.
and then take a look around and look for the most nervous person in the room and go over to that person.
Great,
because they're going to
great
be
tip.
super happy that you did that.
Yeah. The one that's like nervously scrolling through their phone. Yeah.
Exactly. Totally. Yes,
Yeah, I love
yes,
that.
yes.
That's such a great
Yeah.
tip.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, that sounds really exciting to launch that next year. That'll be really
I
powerful
am
for people to go through.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. I love the actors with Get Better Roles, and but it is a comprehensive program. So people come into it, and it's like, oh wow, I have to do all this stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to do it all today,
Yeah.
right? But you do have to do it, right? And the more you do, the more success that you will have. But of course, you could also just take pieces of it. Like I had an actor come in. I say actor, she's a woman, but I always say actor. I had an actor come in. Well, her sole purpose was to get an agent, and she ended up getting 5 meetings. She chose the agent she wanted, and she was good to go. And I haven't seen her since. And it's like, great. That's you got what you needed from it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, maybe I'll see her again when she decides, hey, maybe I'll check out that networking thing
Yeah.
that you have.
Who
But
knows? But that's a good testimonial anyway to kind of have that transformation in somebody that they wanted. Because if you're wanting to search for an agent, it's like you're just trying to mask the problem by, as we were saying, like just like maybe the agent is the problem, so I just need a different one.
yeah.
Whereas actually you kind of gave her the tools to empower herself through the rest of the journey, I suppose. It sounds like.
Absolutely. Well, I think as most actors, probably anyone who needs an agent will like send out 10, 20 queries, whatever it is, praying they're going to get an answer. And when they get that first answer, then it's like, oh, thank God, they're done. Like, yes, let's do this. And that I think that there's a much better way to do it. I think it's very disempowering. And it puts the all the power in the agent's hand, and it doesn't belong there. You deserve the power, right?
Mm.
You are the one with the talent. And so when you do it, the way that I suggest, you end up getting a lot of, first of all, you're not even asking to be in their roster, right? That's
Mm.
not even part of the vocabulary. It's let's have a conversation. You're
Yeah.
already approaching it as an equal and not
Mm.
as please, you know. But
Love
it
that.
it does change the dynamic, and that's important because I think if there's one thing that I want all of my clients across the board to come away with, it's empowerment. You have the power to do this. This is your life. This is your dream. Don't give somebody else the power over that. They don't care about your dream like you do. You have to make it happen.
Yeah. Love that. And what those are really great words to end with, I think. And also anyone listening, even if you're not an actor or anyone that's going to be auditioning for things, I would suggest just rewinding and listening to those words again, just because they go for any creative path. We're all trying to like bring a vision to life of some life that we want to live, from where we get to create what we want to create, and that comes from you. It doesn't come from being someone else granting you with the magic permission to do what you want to do. It comes from you finding that within yourself and giving yourself permission to actually trust your own talent and trust your vision. These things, they're planted within us for a reason. We have a pulling towards some creative path for a reason. um if we didn't, everyone would want to do the same thing, and they don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I so agree with that. I always say your passion, your burning curiosity, that's the key to understanding what your purpose on this earth is. So
Yeah.
listen to it, don't ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Anne, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been such a great conversation. It's been so many amazing insights. I'm sure so many people will get a lot of nuggets of gold from. So
I
I'll of course
appreciate the
leave
chance, Ellie.
I'll of
Yeah,
course leave links to find you in the show notes, but for anyone that's on the
great.
phone now, where can everyone find you?
Probably the easiest is Linktree at act_bold. That kind of has all of my links. And if the idea of putting on an event or learning more about something that interests you or whatever it is, has sparked something in you, you can download a free workbook that'll definitely get you started on your journey.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all those links down below
Passion
in the
Project
show
to
notes,
Pro is the name
obviously.
of that. Yeah,
Passion Project to Pro.
perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Well, you'll find the links below anyway. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining me today, Anne. It's been a
Thank
pleasure to
you.
have you on the show.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Maverick Mind. I hope that you've loved it, and if you have, I would appreciate it so much if you would subscribe and write a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to this podcast from. If you'd like to keep the conversation going, I invite you to join me over on Instagram at maverickmindco or on my website maverickmind.elliefoden.com. And I'll see you in another podcast very, very soon.